Thanksgiving morning felt like war in slow motion. Everything looked normal. Sunlight pouring through the kitchen window, the clatter of silver on porcelain, the scent of roasted turkey that didn't belong to me, but there was something rotten underneath it. I was polishing silverware I wasn't invited to use, smoothing napkins I wouldn't unfold. My mother hovered near the oven, her voice sweet for everyone but me. She didn't even glance in my direction. She hadn't since I walked in the night before with my duffel bag and stiff salute. They'd removed my seat from the table, like physically removed it. It used to sit to the left of my father across from where Daniel always sat. But today, there were only 6 chairs. When I asked about it, my mother's voice didn't even waver. We had to adjust for the space. "You understand, don't you?" she said, already moving on. I nodded, but I didn't understand. I understood too much. Daniel, my younger brother, was in from Portland. Perfect wife, perfect job, perfect teeth. He kissed Mom on the cheek, slapped Dad on the back. Laughed at all the right things. His voice was everywhere. Mine was nowhere. They'd always been better at loving him. I stood at the sink, holding a fork with trembling fingers, scrubbing it even though it didn't need cleaning. I didn't want to look at anyone. I didn't want to hear the way they were pretending I didn't exist. I stared out the window instead. That's when I saw it, the candle on the sill. Just a little votive thing. White wax, thin glass cup. But I recognized it. It used to sit by Grandma's Bible. She would light it on holidays for the ones who couldn't make it home. After she died, my mother boxed everything up. I never thought I'd see it again. And yet there it was, burning, flickering gently in the draft. I kept staring at it, not sure what to make of it. Was it for me? A mockery? An accident? The longer I looked at it, the less sure I was. The wind made the flame bend toward the glass like it wanted out. That's when my father stepped in from the garage. He didn't look at me at first, just reached for a beer. 11 a.m., Claire, he said without turning. I straightened like I'd been summoned in formation. You packed already? I'm staying till Sunday. That's what we agreed, I said. He looked at me then. His eyes were sharp, hard. Same eyes that used to watch football like it was life and death. Same eyes that lit up for Daniel and dimmed for me. Always had. No, he said. We decided it's best you head out today. I didn't speak. He opened the hall closet and pulled out a black trash bag. Inside were my boots. I'd left them at the door the night before. I guess they were too dirty for his tile floors. Dad, I said, that's all I could manage. You've had enough time to get it together, he said. His voice was low, almost casual. It's not good for the family to carry dead weight. You're 36. Come on, be serious. I looked at the bag. He held it out to me like a prize. He added almost kindly, Losers don't belong here, Claire. You know that. I didn't cry. Not then. I reached out, took the bag. My boots thumped against each other like hollow bones. I walked to the door. No one followed. No one said goodbye. My mother was still at the stove. Daniel was laughing at something his wife had said. I could see their shadows in the hallway mirror, whole, happy, untouched. I stepped outside. The cold hit fast. Sharp. It filled my chest in a way their house never could. I stood on the porch and looked back in. Through the window, I could see the candle still flickering. Still burning for someone who didn't belong. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe a minute. Maybe 10. Just me, my boots in a garbage bag, and the dull roar of silence behind me. Then the door closed. Quietly. No slam. Just a soft finality, like the seal of a tomb. I heard the click of the lock, and that's when it broke whatever thread was holding me together. not into tears. No, it wasn't that simple. It was colder than that. My fingers went numb. My eyes burned, but nothing came out. I just stood there and stared at the candle, its flame still trembling in the window like it was afraid too. Eventually, I turned and walked down the steps, through the front yard, past the mailbox still painted with our name, Marin, in a font my mother had chosen, in a house I used to dream of returning to. Funny, in every war story they ask if you made it home. They never ask if home lets you stay. 2 days before they kicked me out, I stood under a gray sky with a chest full of medals and a name no one said aloud. Veterans Day ceremony outside the municipal courthouse, same spot where my father had once sworn in for the National Guard. I wore my formal blues because they still fit, because I had nothing else to wear that didn't carry the smell of sand or sweat or someone else's blood. I pinned on every decoration they ever gave me. There were 11. Most people don't know what half of them mean. That day, no one asked. The mayor read a speech fumbling over names. Mine was carved into the stone. They unveiled a list of local soldiers with honorable service and no fatalities. The lucky ones. I stood there, hands folded behind me, and waited to feel proud. But pride doesn't come on command. It doesn't come when the only people clapping are strangers and the family who raised you doesn't show. I'd invited them. Weeks ahead. Sent the text with no frills, no pressure. Just Veterans Day ceremony. Courthouse. Nove. 11. 9 a.m. I'll be in uniform. No reply. When I followed up, my mother responded 2 days later with hope the ceremony was meaningful. As if it were a church service for someone else. As if I were someone else. I didn't cry then either. It takes more than silence to make me cry. I've learned that much. After the ceremony, an older woman in a red scarf approached me. Her hands were liver-spotted and cold when she clasped mine. "My son never came back?" she said. Her voice cracked like winter branches. "But you did. Thank you." I nodded. I didn't know what to say to that. I never do. I took the long way home, passed by my old high school where they'd once hung a banner with my picture on it, Claire Marin Class, of 2007, serving with honor. I remembered posing for that photo in my first-year fatigues, all hope and steel. Thought if I just followed orders hard enough, I'd be welcomed home a hero. What no one tells you is that coming home isn't a moment, it's a long, cold unraveling. And sometimes there's no one there to meet the plane. When I got back to my parents' house that day, my brother's car was already in the driveway. He wasn't supposed to fly in until Friday. I walked inside to laughter echoing down the hallway. My father was pouring scotch. My mother had made lemon bars, Daniel's favorite. The smell hit me like a wall. I stood there in full dress blues with 11 medals pressing against my chest, and not one of them looked up. When I cleared my throat, Daniel blinked. "Oh." "Hey," he said. "Didn't see you there. I just got back from the ceremony," I said. Dad grunted. "How was it?" "It was fine." "Well, that's good," he said, and then he turned back to his drink. I went upstairs and peeled the uniform off like a second skin, hung it in the closet. I could hear them laughing downstairs again. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands on my knees, and stared at the ribbons I'd just pinned back onto their cloth board. Each one meant something. Long deployments, leadership under fire, operations that would never be spoken of publicly. I remembered where I'd earned each of them. The smell of diesel, the burst of static before the radio died, the sand that never left your skin. To them, it was just fabric and metal, a decoration for someone who couldn't seem to get it together. I thought about the way people say thank you for your service like a prayer they don't believe in, like a spell that absolves them from asking real questions. Downstairs, Daniel started talking about his new tech startup. He'd been offered a $500,000 investment. My dad clapped him on the back so hard, I heard the sound through the floorboards. I stood, walked to the mirror. My reflection looked alien, clean, decorated. A soldier without a war, a daughter without a home. It hit me then none of what I'd done mattered here. Not to them. Not anymore. Maybe it never had. Honor doesn't mean anything in a house where silence weighs more than scars. Where medals are less impressive than an MBA. Where making something of yourself means stock options, not survival. They never asked about the things I carried back, the dreams that came after gunfire, the night sweats that left me clinging to the mattress, the woman I saw die in Kandahar because I blinked at the wrong second. Instead, they asked why I hadn't applied for more jobs, why I didn't date, why I couldn't just act normal. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass of the bedroom window. The same view I used to stare out as a teenager. Same oak tree, same sky. But I wasn't the same. I thought about the ceremony, about the old woman with the red scarf, the softness in her voice. She hadn't known me, but she'd seen me. No one else did. Not my parents, not my brother, not this town with its polite smiles and empty banners. The next morning, I packed a bag. Just a few things. I didn't tell them. I knew it would come to this. I could feel it. It wasn't anger, it was gravity. After the door closed behind me, I didn't go far. I told myself I was walking to clear my head, but really, I didn't know where else to go. I passed by neighbors I didn't recognize anymore, their homes glowing gold with family and laughter. Nobody looked twice at the woman carrying a trash bag like it was her suitcase. The air smelled like smoke and cinnamon. My fingers had gone numb around the plastic handles before I turned back toward the only place left. The garage. It sat behind the house like an afterthought, half buried under pine needles and disuse. No one had parked in it for years. After Dad's second heart surgery, he stopped driving anything that didn't have heated seats. But the side door still opened with a firm nudge, same as it had when I was 16, and hiding in there with a soldering iron and a head full of dreams. Inside, the air was stale and cold, but familiar. It still smelled like motor oil and pine floor wax, like old leather. Like me before I left for basic. There was dust on everything, but under the dust was history. The go-kart I'd built with Uncle Rob had been dismantled and stacked in pieces, but the box of screws labeled Claire's Tools was still where I left it. I slid the trash bag down onto the concrete floor. My boots thumped again, dull and empty. I sat beside them, not because I was tired, because I needed to be near something that remembered me. The garage did. The walls still had marks where I'd pinned blueprints and taped up training schedules. There was a rusted fold-out cot tucked in the corner, the same one I brought home from basic the first Christmas I got leave. I used to sleep on it even when I didn't need to, just to feel like I was still inside something disciplined. Safe. I unfolded it. The joints creaked, but it held. I sat down, staring at the plastic tub I'd brought inside. The one with my last few things from my old apartment. Inside was my duffel. Inside the duffel, the medals, zipped away like secrets, as if hiding them might make the silence sting less. On the shelf above the cot sat something I hadn't thought about in years, my snow globe collection. There were 7 of them, each one from a place I swore I'd return to. Tokyo, Berlin, Paris. I'd bought them off local vendors during leave. None were fancy. But inside each one was a miniature world, tiny buildings glittering snow, and silence so thick it felt like prayer. I reached up and took one down. Rome, the Colosseum under a dome of glass. I shook it gently. Watched the glitter swirl around like ash in a memory. That's what I always loved about them. Inside there was always a storm, but nothing ever broke. Nothing ever cracked. They just kept snowing. I held it in both hands for a long time. Longer than I should have. Then I set it on the floor by the cot and lay down. It was so quiet in there. The kind of quiet you can only find in places people have forgotten. No one texted. No one called. My phone was still in my pocket, but I didn't look at it. I already knew what it wouldn't say. After a while, I sat up again and opened the duffel. Just to see the medals. Just to remind myself they were real. My fingers ran over the edges of the case like they might open a door. Purple Heart, Army Commendation Medal, Joint Service Achievement, Bronze Star with V device, each one earned, each one paid for. I lined them up in front of me side by side against the cool garage floor. It wasn't ceremony, it wasn't pride, it was inventory. Proof that I hadn't imagined it all, that I had in fact been somewhere and done something, that I had mattered, even if no one else remembered. I thought about the candle again, the one in the window, still burning when I walked away. I wondered if they'd blow it out after dinner, if they'd even notice it was there. Maybe it was never for me. Maybe it was just part of the centerpiece. Or maybe someone had left it there by accident and the whole world had read too much into it. I pulled my coat tighter around me and lay back on the cot, eyes open to the ceiling. There were still the constellation stickers I'd stuck up there as a kid, some peeled away, some glowing faintly even now. I used to believe I could learn the stars by memorizing their names. But I never did. I only remembered the shapes. Orion Cassiopeia, the crooked W near the light fixture. I fell asleep watching them curled around a world no one wanted me in. And I dreamed of silence. Not the empty kind. The kind that wraps around you like a blanket. The kind that knows your name. The next morning, I went into the house like a ghost. My boots didn't make a sound on the tile. The air smelled like leftover pie and burnt coffee. And there was that special brand of morning stillness, half hopeful, half exhausted, that only happens after a holiday. My father's car was gone. He'd probably left for the club. My mother stood by the sink rinsing plates without really looking at them. The garbage was full of turkey bones and damp napkins. She glanced up as I stepped in but didn't say anything. She just kept scrubbing a pan that was already clean. I took a cereal box from the pantry, poured milk into a chipped bowl, sat at the kitchen island right on the edge of the granite counter, as far from her as I could get without being obvious about it. She finally spoke without turning. "You slept in the garage." "Yeah, it's not heated," I noticed. Silence again. She rinsed the same spot for the third time. I stared into my bowl, watching the cornflakes go soggy. Each crunch was an act of defiance. I was chewing through 36 years of small betrayals. Every skipped recital, every half-hearted hug, every time they said I was too loud, too serious, too much like Uncle Rob, dead Uncle Rob, the only one who ever really saw me. "You can't stay here," she said softly. I paused, swallowed. "It's Saturday, I know. You said I could stay till Monday." She turned off the water and finally faced me. Her hands were red from the heat. She dried them slowly, deliberately on the floral dish towel I remembered from childhood. "Claire," she said in the voice she used when she thought she was being kind, "you knew this wasn't permanent. I just need 2 days. You've been out for 2 years now, 18 months. Right. So it's not like this was sudden." I pushed my spoon aside and stood up. "I came here because you told me I could." Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "And now I'm telling you, it's time to go." I nodded. There wasn't anything else to do. Arguing with her was like shouting into a fan. The sound comes back at you all broken and useless. I took the bowl to the sink. washed it, dried it, left it in the rack without a word. As I walked past her, she called after me. "Claire," I turned. "If you need help getting back to the city, I can Venmo you for a bus ticket." The sound I made wasn't a laugh, but it might have been the bones of one. When I stepped outside, the wind was brutal, sharp enough to sting the edges of my eyes. I made it back to the garage before I checked my phone. One message. From Daniel. "You can't expect people to keep paying for your failures. No greeting, no punctuation, just that." I stared at it for a long time, and then instead of deleting it, I wrote it down. In the back of the little green notebook I kept tucked in my pack. I flipped past pages of deployment notes, maintenance schedules, Arabic phrases I hadn't used in years, and wrote it there in block letters. "You can't expect people to keep paying for your failures." Then I closed the notebook. I stayed in the garage the rest of the day, didn't go back inside. The light shifted slowly through the dust-streaked window, casting long shadows across the cot. I laid my medals out again, rearranged them by date, earned instead of merit. It felt cleaner that way, more honest. When the sun began to set, I lit the tea light candle. It had been in my pack for years, a cheap little thing I picked up during my first tour somewhere near Herat. A local vendor had given it to me for free. For luck, she'd said, her hands trembling. For light when you are far from home. I'd never lit it until now. The flame caught slowly flickering at first. Uncertain, like it didn't know where it was. I watched it in the dark. Watched it until my eyes hurt. They were inside, somewhere warm and full of wine and television. And I was out here next to a rusted toolbox, warming my hands over a $2 candle. The thing is, I didn't feel angry. I felt clean. Scrubbed raw, but clean. The kind of clean that only comes after everything else has been stripped away. I took out the Rome snow globe again, shook it, watched the storm settle around that little glass world, and whispered into the dark, "You don't get to name me." Nobody answered, but the silence didn't feel empty this time. It felt like mine. I left at exactly 6:43 p.m. on Thanksgiving night. I remember because I checked my phone twice, once when I stepped outside the garage, and again when I stood at the edge of the porch, boots on concrete, my whole life packed into a cracked plastic tub and a trash bag. The sky had already gone dark, the way it does fast in November, like someone flipping a switch you weren't ready for. The neighborhood was quiet, but behind the curtains, you could feel the hum of dinners still being eaten, televisions glowing, families pretending better than mine. My hands were cold. I didn't bother with gloves. It felt right somehow to carry everything bare. The porch light was still on. I stood under it, watching my breath come out like steam. Behind me, through the big front window, I could see their silhouettes at the dinner table. My father carving something, Daniel raising a glass, my mother passing a bowl. I wasn't in the scene. I hadn't even been considered for the cast, but the candle was still there. That little votive on the windowsill, barely visible now against the warm lights inside. It flickered once, twice, then held steady. I stood there staring at it like it had something to say. It didn't. It just burned, quietly, like it had been left behind on accident. My grandmother used to say, "Leave a candle lit in case someone brave is still out there." I always thought she meant it for people lost in storms or driving through snow or coming home from deployment. I never imagined the brave one wouldn't be invited back in. I shifted the plastic tub against my hip. My boots knocked again in the bag. They always made that sound hollow blunt. I thought about just leaving them there, on the porch, like a warning or a final offering. But I didn't. I couldn't. I stepped back and looked at the house one more time. The white siding, the plastic wreath Mom put up every year, the crack in the cement Dad never fixed. All of it too familiar and too far away now. Then the door opened. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, someone had come to stop me, to say they'd been wrong, that I still belonged. But it wasn't like that. My mother stepped out holding her phone. She didn't look up from it. "You forgot your charger?" she said. She placed it on the porch railing without handing it to me. Then she turned back inside. The door didn't slam. It clicked. Soft, precise, final. That sound? It didn't echo. It rang. I picked up the charger. It felt warm, like it had just been unplugged. I slid it into my coat pocket and stood there for another moment, waiting to feel something sharp or loud. Anger, grief, anything. But what came instead was something colder, slower. The awareness that I was truly gone, not leaving, gone. I walked down the steps. The leaves crackled under my boots. Somewhere in the distance, someone set off fireworks, probably leftover from the 4th. Little pops and flares against the black sky, like memories trying to get your attention. I didn't look. I passed the mailbox with our name on it. Marin. Still painted in black letters, just slightly crooked. My father had made me repaint it when I was 12 because I didn't line up the stencils perfectly. I could still hear him yelling about presentation. I thought about ripping the whole thing out of the ground. But I didn't. Instead, I paused, took a deep breath, and looked back. The candle was still burning, just barely visible through the sheer curtain. It looked so small from where I stood, like a mistake someone had forgotten to blow out. Maybe it was for me. Maybe it never was. I turned and walked. No destination, just forward. The wind picked up. My coat flapped around my knees. The trash bag thudded softly against my thigh. I walked past the Thompson's place, still lit up like a magazine spread. Past the corner where I crashed my bike when I was 10. Past the empty lot where the gas station used to be. I walked until I couldn't see the house anymore. Until the candle was just a memory pressing against the back of my eyes. I found a bus stop bench and sat. No buses would come for hours, but I didn't care. I opened the tub, pulled out the snow globe. Paris this time. Eiffel Tower under glass. I shook it once, watched the glitter fall like slow silver regret. Then I set it on the bench beside me and whispered, "You're safe now." No one heard it, not really, but the words were for me, and that was enough. The room smelled like mildew and television. You know the kind. Old carpeting, soaked with 1,000 strangers' habits. A wall-mounted unit hissing dry heat into the corners. Fluorescent light that makes your skin look sick no matter how alive you are. Motel room, Core 17, just off Route 5 behind a faded Shell station. The front desk clerk gave me a look that wasn't curiosity or concern, just survival. Like he knew not to ask questions. Like he recognized the shape of someone carrying their life in a plastic tub. I gave a fake name. He didn't blink. The key was heavy in my hand. Metal, not card. Still chained to one of those big green plastic tags that tells you in bold numbers how unimportant you are. I pushed open the door and walked into the quiet. The floor creaked in one spot near the foot of the bed. The bedspread had a pattern that made me dizzy if I looked too long, blue, and tan diamonds warped by time and bleach. I set the tub on the table, dropped the trash bag near the chair, and stood in the middle of the room for what felt like an hour. It was the first place I'd been in a long time that didn't belong to someone else, that didn't expect anything from me. I kicked off my boots and sat down. The mattress was too soft in the middle, the kind that sucks your spine downward like quicksand, but I didn't care. I turned on the TV just to hear another voice. Some game show bright, empty faces asking each other questions they already knew the answers to. I muted it after a minute. The silence afterward was almost worse. It rang, not loud, not sharp, just steady like tinnitus of the soul. I opened the tub, took out the duffel, sat cross-legged on the bed and unzipped it. Same contents as before. Medals, notebook, that candle. I held it in my hand. The wax had chipped along the side, but the wick was still intact. I lit it. The only flame in the room. It danced even with no breeze, casting little flickers across the peeling wallpaper. I put it on the table beside the snow globe. I'd brought the Paris one. Together, they made a kind of altar. I didn't pray, but I stared at them like I was hoping for an answer. Outside, a truck rumbled by on the highway. Its brakes hissed like breath. I lay back. The ceiling was stained, 3 brown patches in the shape of clouds or maybe old wounds. I counted them. Then I turned my head to look at the candle again. The way it flickered reminded me of something I hadn't thought about in years. The first mission that went sideways. Northern Helmand. Humvee hit an IED. Afterward, in the blackout of adrenaline, I sat by the vehicle while the rest of the squad regrouped. I remember lighting a cigarette with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The flame wouldn't catch, kept flickering and dying. My fingers trembled so bad I dropped the match twice. Same motion now, same flicker, same stillness, just quieter. I hadn't cried in the motel either. Not when I dropped the tub on my foot. Not when I realized I'd forgotten my razor. Not when I lay back and remembered I hadn't eaten since cereal that morning. I wasn't even hungry. There's something that happens when you go too long without belonging. Your body stops sending certain signals, like it knows no one's listening. I stared at the phone, thought about texting Dana, the woman from the VA center I'd seen a few months back. She'd told me to call if things ever got tight, but I didn't know what to say. Tight doesn't cover being evicted by your own family with a holiday smile. I opened the notebook instead, flipped to the back where I'd written Daniel's text. You can't expect people to keep paying for your failures. I added a new line under it. Some debts are paid in full. They just don't like the receipt. I closed the notebook and placed it beside the candle. The snow globe caught a bit of the flame's glow and threw it across the room in a soft, golden curve. That curve landed on the mirror over the dresser. I stood, walked to it, looked, and what I saw wasn't what I expected. Not broken, not strong, just there. My hair was pulled back in a messy knot, face pale, circles under my eyes like I hadn't slept in a week, which technically I hadn't. But there was something in the eyes. Not pride, not fury. Just this dull, sharp clarity. Like waking up underwater and finally knowing which way is up. I leaned in close, closer than comfort. Then I whispered my name. Claire Marin. Not staff sergeant, not daughter, not sister. Just Claire. Just someone trying to keep the flame alive. Back on the bed, the candle flickered once. Then settled. I sat down beside it, picked up the snow globe, shook it again. The glitter fell slow, and even this time, I watched it until I couldn't anymore. And then I turned off the lights. Let the dark take the edges of the room. Let the flame do what it wanted, and fell asleep without flinching. You think silence is a relief? That when the shouting stops, the damage stops too. But that's not how it works. Not really. Shouting is at least a shape, a sound, something you can answer back to. Silence. Silence is a wall you keep pressing your forehead against, hoping to feel warmth. The motel room didn't get quieter. I just got more used to the static. On the second day, I counted how long I could go without hearing another human voice. 41 hours. Unless you count the clerks, you're good when I paid for another night. But I didn't. That wasn't a voice. That was a receipt. I didn't leave the room. I barely moved. I rationed a bag of trail mix and 1 protein bar. Drank lukewarm water from the tap in the bathroom, which ran rusty for the first few seconds. My boots sat by the door like obedient dogs. I hadn't worn them since the garage. The candle had burned itself out. Just a blackened wick now curled like a spine. I didn't throw it away. I kept it on the nightstand next to the Paris globe and my notebook. The silence was thickest at night. I turned the TV on not to watch it, but to let something else breathe in the room. I found a local news channel that looped the same segments every few hours. Lost dog in Fairview, gas prices holding steady, cold front coming through, then something else, a feature about veterans struggling to reintegrate. The footage was older, grainy, maybe filmed months ago, but there I was, in the background of a shot at the VA center, blurred but unmistakable, my posture, my medals, the quiet way I stood off to the side while Dana introduced someone else. I sat up, watched it twice, then a third time. I hadn't known they were filming that day, and no one had told me it aired. They called it Invisible Wounds, a local veteran's fight to be seen. No one said my name, but anyone who knew me would recognize the way I folded my hands. And someone did. My phone lit up around 3 a.m., a single text from my cousin Megan. "That looked like you." Was it? That was all. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to. Because I didn't know how to say yes, it's me, and I'm still here, and I don't know why that matters anymore. I turned the phone face down and lay back in the dark. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and listened to the hum of the heater, the faint buzz of the TV screen, even when muted. And the silence. It was louder than everything. It pressed against my ribs like weight, not crushing, just constant. You start to feel like maybe it's not silence at all. Maybe it's the sound of people choosing not to care, not calling, not asking, not looking past their own neat lives to wonder where you went when you disappeared. I got up and opened the duffel, pulled out the medals again. I hadn't touched them since the garage. They felt heavier in this room, like they absorbed the silence too. I laid them out on the floor one by one: Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Combat Action, Meritorious Unit Commendation. Each one polished, each one shaped like something that was supposed to mean I mattered. I picked up the Purple Heart, held it in my palm, let the edges press into the skin until it hurt. Then I whispered something I didn't even plan. "Did you ever think you might not come home just to be erased?" I waited. But medals don't answer. I put it back down. Later, as dawn stretched thin across the window, I sat at the table and opened the notebook again. Flipped past Daniel's message, past the line I wrote underneath it. On the next page, I wrote, "There is no home waiting, only forward." It didn't feel like poetry. It felt like a fact. I sat there for a long time staring at those words. Then I added another line beneath them, smaller. "No one is coming. That doesn't mean I have to stop walking." Outside, a car started in the parking lot. Tires on gravel. A woman shouting at her kid. A door slamming. Real sounds. Ugly welcome human. I left the notebook open and stood. Went to the mirror. Looked again. This time, I saw something different. Not stronger, not softer. Just still here. That meant something. Even if it was quiet. Especially because it was. I found the box while looking for socks. It was wedged in the bottom of the plastic tub beneath a sweatshirt I hadn't worn since Kabul. The cardboard was soft from age, one corner caved in, but the handwriting on the side was still legible. "Claire keeps safe." I recognized it instantly. My own handwriting? Probably written sometime in my 20s, back when I still labeled things as if someone else might need to know what they meant. Inside were paper stars, dozens of them. Folded tight and small, the kind you make from long, thin strips crease roll-pinch seal. My grandfather had taught me how to make them when I was 8. Said if you folded 1,000, your wish would come true. I never got past 300. I was too impatient. Or maybe I stopped believing in wishes. They were still colorful, still holding their shapes. Blue, gold, red, green faded now, like someone had drawn over them with time. I ran my fingers through them like they were coins. They made a soft, rustling sound, dry and fragile, each one a frozen moment. Buried beneath them was a birthday card. From my 30th, a simple one, stars and stripes on the front to my daughter, printed in stiff cursive. Inside, next one's back home, signed in my mother's handwriting, not even a full sentence. No love, no warmth, just a line like a placeholder. I had opened it in the barracks that night, shared a store-bought cake with 3 other soldiers I barely knew. We'd laughed. It wasn't much, but it had been honest. 6 birthdays since then. Most of them spent in places with sand silence or both. This one, my 36th, had come and gone 5 days ago. No one had said anything. No text. No card. No candle on a cake. Not even a wrong number call I could pretend meant something. You'd think I'd be used to it. But something about it hurt in a way I couldn't explain. Not the kind of hurt that makes you cry, just the kind that makes everything else feel colder. Like the world had stepped a little further away when you weren't looking. I pulled out one of the paper stars. Blue with silver dots. I remembered the night I made it. We'd just gotten word that a convoy got hit south of Lashkar Gah. I didn't know anyone on it, but it rattled all of us. I couldn't sleep, so I sat on my cot and folded stars until the sun came up. It had helped. I tried folding a new one. My hands were stiffer now, out of practice. The strip tore halfway through. I cursed softly and tried again. This time, I finished it. It was uneven, a little crushed. The point didn't land right. I kept it anyway. There was a knock at the door. My body responded before I did, shoulders tense, heart on alert, fingers curling slightly. Training doesn't ask permission. I waited. Another knock. Then silence. I stepped to the door and opened it a crack. No one was there. But on the ground, tucked into the side of the doorframe, was a paper bag. Inside 2 apples, a granola bar, and a note in looping blue ink. We saw the segment. You're not invisible. Room 12. I looked down the row of motel rooms, all closed, all quiet. I didn't know who room 12 was. Didn't matter. I carried the bag inside and sat on the bed, staring at the apples like they were treasure. I took a bite of one. It was crisp. Not sweet, not sour. Just real. I hadn't realized how hungry I was. Sometimes kindness doesn't come with a face. Sometimes it doesn't say your name. It just appears when you need it most. I ate both apples slowly. Let the silence stay. Then I folded another star. My hands remembered more this time. The folds came easier. I made 3 in a row, set them beside the others on the table. A little army of wishes, none of them spoken aloud. I picked up the birthday card again, looked at the handwriting. The sterile neatness of someone who's practiced saying the right thing without ever meaning it. I didn't cry, but I did whisper, I came home. The words felt strange, like they were trying to become something else. I folded the card in half and slid it into the bottom of the box, covered it with the stars. Then I folded one more, red with a faint gold line running down the center. This one I held in my palm longer. It was lopsided, creased wrong in the middle, but it was the first one that felt like mine again. I didn't make a wish, but I kept it. I hadn't planned to go back to the VA center. Honestly, I didn't plan anything past that motel bed and the next cup of motel coffee burnt brown and bitter, like regret. But the bag from room 12 stuck with me. 2 apples and a note. You're not invisible. I kept the note in my coat pocket. Folded once, then folded again, soft at the edges from where I kept touching it. It didn't name me, but it saw me. That was enough to get me back on a bus. The VA center was about 8 miles south. I paid in cash. Kept my eyes on the window. Let the strip malls and chain restaurants pass like low empty prayers. The same world on loop. I walked in just after 9:00. Not busy yet. Fluorescent lights humming. A man in a Marine Corps hoodie snoring in the far corner. The receptionist looked up, but before she could say anything, I heard my name. Claire Dana. Her voice always came like that. Low, clear, soft, but not weak. Like rain on pavement, uninvited, but necessary. She stepped out from behind a half wall, holding a stack of folders against her chest like a shield. Her hair was shorter than last time. She'd gone gray at the temples. I liked it. Made her look like someone who'd stayed through storms. You came back, she said. I wasn't planning to, I replied. Dana smiled just slightly. Those are usually the best visits. She gestured for me to follow. Same back hallway. Same beige walls and old posters telling you it's okay to ask for help. I didn't look at them. I'd looked too many times before and never really seen them. Her office was unchanged. Plant in the corner, a crooked diploma on the wall, 2 chairs, 1 desk, a mug that said, "You survived Monday," full of pens, none that worked. I sat. She didn't start with questions, just opened a manila folder, thumbed through the pages like she already knew what was in there. My name, my record, dates, places. You've been gone a while, she said. Not really. She looked up. How have you been sleeping? I shrugged. In a motel. So bad. She nodded like that made sense. It did. She asked a few more questions. Light ones. Entry points. I gave short answers. I didn't want to open anything too wide. Not yet. Then she stopped writing and leaned back. Looked at me. You've been erased, she said. I blinked. Excuse me? You came back and they didn't know what to do with you. So they folded you up like a flag and put you on a shelf. That's what it feels like, doesn't it? I didn't answer right away. Because she was right. It wasn't cruelty, not in the usual sense. It was absence. Like someone slowly editing you out of the photo until your outline was the only thing left. I don't want to be a problem, I said quietly. Dana tilted her head. You're not. You sure about that? Yes, she said so simply, I believed her. We sat in silence after that, but it was different than the motel silence. This one had breath in it. It had weight, sure, but not the crushing kind. More like a hand on your shoulder you didn't know you needed. She poured me tea. Mint. Too hot. I let it cool and wrapped my hands around the mug anyway. Warmth through ceramic. I hadn't held warmth in days. We talked about little things after that. The snow globe, the candle, room 12. I didn't tell her everything, just the pieces that felt safe. The rest I kept tucked away behind my ribs where my real voice lived. Before I left, she said something that stayed with me. You don't have to prove anything here. You just have to show up. She pressed a card into my hand. Not her number, just a date and time. Come back tomorrow. No forms, no intake. Just come. I nodded. Couldn't promise more than that. Outside the air had turned, not colder, just sharper. The way air feels right before snow. I walked 2 blocks before I realized I was still holding the mug. I turned back. Set it on the front desk. The receptionist smiled. Not the fake kind. In my coat pocket, the note from room 12 crinkled. "You're not invisible." I unfolded it, smoothed it out against my thigh, put it in my notebook between the page with my brother's message and the one that said, "There is no home waiting, only forward." Then I wrote something new beneath it. Forward doesn't have to mean alone. I sat on a bench outside the center and let the sun touch my face. It wasn't much, but it was something. That night in the motel, I lit the candle again. The wick caught on the first try. The first time I noticed it, I was brushing my teeth in the motel bathroom. It was early, barely light outside, the kind of hour when the world hasn't decided what kind of day it wants to be yet. The mirror was streaked with old cleaner, and the lighting buzzed above me like it was trying to outlast its own exhaustion. I leaned in more out of habit than vanity. I don't check my reflection for beauty anymore. I look for signs, fractures, new shadows under the eyes, proof that I'm still here. That's when I saw it, just below my right eye, faint but unmistakable. A pale line about an inch long, soft as breath, cutting through the skin like someone had traced it with a razor dipped in mercy. I didn't remember getting it. Maybe in training. Maybe deployment. Could have been anything. Barbed wire. Broken glass. Even a fingernail in a struggle. I'd taken hits in places that never bruised, but left marks anyway. Funny thing about scars, they don't ask for permission. They show up. Sometimes quietly, sometimes after you've already healed from everything else. I touched it gently. My fingers hovered there, not quite pressing. As if it might vanish if I acknowledged it too directly. I didn't hate it. In fact, for the first time in a long while, I felt something close to recognition. Like my own skin was telling me, "You lived." Back in the room, the candle had burned halfway down. The wax pooled into a little crater. The flame swayed slightly when I opened the bathroom door, as if it had been listening. I got dressed slowly. Dark jeans, gray t-shirt. The same coat I'd worn since Thanksgiving. The pocket still held the folded note from room 12 and Dana's appointment card. I touched both like talismans. Soft, paper thin, but real. Before I left for the VA, I took the mirror down from the bathroom wall. It wasn't heavy, just screwed in loosely like most things in places where people only stay for a little while. I turned it over, nothing on the back, no writing, no meaning. But when I looked at it again, holding it in both hands, like a tray, I didn't see just my face. I saw the scar. I saw the absence of makeup. I saw the absence of apology. I propped the mirror against the chair. Not because I wanted to keep looking at myself, but because I wanted to remember what that silence looked like. The kind that doesn't scream, the kind that just is. At the center, Dana was waiting. She didn't ask if I'd brought paperwork, didn't even mention the scar. But I think she saw it. She offered tea again, same mug. This time, peppermint. We didn't talk much that day. She let me sit across from her in silence. Let me stretch it out. Sometimes we filled it with questions, small ones. What did you eat today? A bagel? What did it taste like dry? Like someone forgot how to make bread. Other times, we didn't say anything at all. That's how I knew she was good. She didn't need to fill space. She just held it open for me. I told her finally about the scar. She nodded. It found you when you weren't looking. I don't remember how I got it. That doesn't matter. I thought memory was important. It is, she said. But not everything that shapes you gets remembered. That stuck. Like the scar. Like the silence. That night back in the motel, I didn't turn on the TV. I sat by the table, lit the candle, and took out the mirror, held it again, looked closely. The scar didn't vanish, but it didn't accuse me either. It just stayed. Proof that something once tried to open me and failed. I opened the notebook again, turned past all the old pages, the bitterness, the lines about failure and debt and abandonment. I started a new one. At the top, I wrote, "I am not the silence. I am the one who walked through it." Then I traced the scar with my fingertip again, slower this time. It felt like truth. When Dana told me about the transitional housing option, I didn't say yes right away. I didn't say anything. Just nodded while staring at the paper she slid across the desk. It had an address scribbled on it in her fast-looping handwriting. A place run by a local org she trusted. Small, quiet, mostly vets. The idea of another room, another mattress that wasn't mine, another set of walls I didn't paint, it made something tighten in my chest. But I also knew I couldn't stay in motel room No. 17 forever. It had started to feel like a tomb dressed in patterned curtains. So I went. The building was old but cared for. Brick, 2 stories. A peeling green awning that flapped in the wind like it didn't want to stay up but hadn't quite given up. Inside, a man named Jalen showed me around. He didn't ask questions. Just handed me a key and said, "Room's yours. No curfews? No rules except don't bleed on the floors." I smiled. He didn't. But it was the kind of not smiling that meant he'd seen worse. Maybe been worse. That made me feel a little less alone. My room had a bed, a chair, a desk, and a window. That was it. The bed was too firm. The chair had a dent in the seat. The desk had a sticker peeling off one corner. A faded American flag. But the window faced west. I could see the sun start to drop below the treetops, all amber and fire. That kind of light makes you quiet without meaning to. It makes you remember things you'd buried behind louder ones. I set my plastic tub down by the bed. Didn't unpack. I didn't need to. Everything I owned fit into a single breath. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the candle. The same one from the motel. The one from Herat. The wax was almost gone, the wick curled inward like a question mark. But it still lit. I placed it on the windowsill and struck a match. The flame caught instantly. It wavered, then steadied. Same flame, different room. For a second, I thought about blowing it out, starting clean. But something inside me said no, not yet. Not this one. Instead, I left the door slightly open. No reason. No fear, just open. I hadn't done that in years. I think I wanted the hallway to know I was there. That night, I wrote letters I never planned to send. One to my father, one to Daniel, one to the girl I used to be sitting in the barracks on her 30th birthday holding that stiff card from home. I didn't try to be poetic, just honest. To my father I wrote, "You taught me how to salute. You never taught me how to come home." To Daniel, "I know you didn't mean to choose your comfort over my existence, but you did. That's something you'll have to carry, not me." To her, "You thought next year would be better. I wish I could lie to you and say it was." I folded the letters neatly and placed them in my notebook. No stamps. No return address. Just small graves for old conversations. I folded another paper star. This one from a page torn out of a VA brochure, the kind that promises healing in 7 steps. I didn't believe it, but the paper folded well. I set the star beside the candle. The globe from Paris sat next to it. I gave it a shake. Glitter swirled. The Eiffel Tower bent slightly in the glass. But it held. That's how it is sometimes. Things bend, but they hold. I watched the snow settle in that tiny world and listened to the silence coming through the cracked door. It wasn't the same silence that chased me out of my parents' house. It wasn't the motel silence either. This one felt like a pause. Like a breath being held just before something is spoken. And for the first time in a long while, I wanted to be here to hear it. It happened without warning, without fanfare or build-up. Just a sound and a moment and the strange, unfamiliar stillness that followed. I was in the hallway outside the shared kitchen at the housing center, holding a chipped mug full of black coffee, waiting for the toaster to finish its slow, uneven war with a slice of bread. Someone down the hall slammed a locker. Hard. The metal echoed off the walls like a gunshot. But I didn't flinch. My hand didn't shake. The coffee stayed steady in the mug. I didn't realize it at first. My body was so used to bracing, I assumed the reaction had happened beneath the surface quietly, like always. But it hadn't. I was still here. It took me a full minute to understand what that meant. When I did, I whispered it into the hallway like a secret, still here. I didn't smile. It wasn't a moment for smiling. It was a moment for noticing. The kind of noticing that comes after years of thinking you'll never be able to stop ducking invisible bullets. I walked back to my room, slowly, toast in one hand, coffee in the other. No shaking, no hypervigilance, just breath. Even and quiet. At my desk, I opened the notebook, found the page with the scar entry. The one where I'd written, "I am not the silence. I am the one who walked through it." Beneath that I wrote, "Today my body forgot to panic." That means something. That afternoon, Jalen asked if I'd sit in on a new intake. A young woman, Navy, just processed out. Barely 23, thin as thread, all sharpness and shut doors. He didn't make it formal, just said she might talk to you more than us. I wasn't sure what to say at first. I'd never sat on the other side of a welcome, but I agreed. She came in with her jaw locked tight, shoulders hunched like someone ready to absorb a hit that never lands. She looked around like she already hated everything. I recognized that. I'd worn it once, like armor. I didn't try to break through it. I just sat across from her and said, "First night's the hardest." She didn't answer, so I added, "Second night's worse." That got her attention. She looked at me not fully, but enough. "You been here long?" she asked. "Long enough to know the vents don't work, and the beds are better than they look." She cracked half a smile. "That's not saying much. It's still something." We sat in silence after that, a silence with a shape. Later, Jalen said, "She stayed, and that mattered." I started volunteering more after that, helping with paperwork, showing people where the laundry was, explaining how to talk to the VA without getting buried in red tape. Some of the younger guys started calling me ma'am. I told them not to. They did it anyway. But I liked it more than I expected. Not because it meant respect, because it meant recognition. That someone saw me not as a problem to fix or a failure to ignore, but as someone who had walked the road before and survived enough of it to leave footprints behind. At night, I still lit the candle. It was smaller now, barely a nub of wax left, but it still burned. I placed it beside the Paris globe and the newest paper star. I'd folded 5 more since moving in. Each one from scraps, flyers, old bus schedules, crumpled letters, never sent. I didn't make wishes when I folded them. Wishes weren't the point anymore. The folding itself was the prayer. The persistence of hands still making something out of almost nothing. That night, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't check my phone. I didn't open the notebook. I just sat on the bed and listened. To the soft hum of the heater. To the quiet footsteps in the hallway. To the sound of myself breathing in a room that finally felt like it didn't belong to someone else. I didn't flinch when the door creaked. I didn't brace when the shadows shifted. I just watched the candle flame hold steady and whispered one more time, not like a plea, but like a promise. Still here. It was snowing the day I threw the candle away. Not hard, Just soft, steady flakes drifting sideways across the sidewalk, like they couldn't make up their minds about falling. The air smelled clean, cold but kind. I woke up before sunrise, sat at the edge of the bed, and watched the room in the early light. The candle on the windowsill had burned itself to a stub, just a blackened wick curled into hardened wax. I hadn't lit it in 3 nights. Not because I didn't need it, because I didn't anymore. I picked it up, held it in my palm. It still held the shape of all those quiet nights, the weight of memory, the echo of motel walls and garage floors, and silence that used to mean exile. But now, it just felt done. I walked outside in my socks. The snow soaked through instantly, but I didn't care. I carried the candle to the dumpster and dropped it in. No ceremony, no second thought. Back inside, I turned on the radio classical low volume, just enough to keep the stillness honest. I dressed slowly. Not my usual jeans and t-shirt. Today wasn't usual. Today, I had somewhere to be. 2 days earlier, Dana had handed me a letter. Official. The envelope thick weighted with significance. A Department of Defense seal. My name printed clean across the front. I'd been offered an advisory role. Civilian liaison for transition services. Not a job I applied for. Dana had quietly passed my name along. I'd been seen, heard, not just by her, by people who knew what it meant to lose footing and still get back up. I ironed the dress uniform the night before. Hadn't worn it in months. It still fit somehow. My fingers worked the metals into place with muscle memory. Bronze star, purple heart, service ribbons like old footprints across my chest. Each one had nearly killed me. Now they anchored me. I tied the black necktie slow steady, buttoned the collar, looked in the mirror. Not at the scar, though it was still there. Not at the ribbons, though they were real. I looked into my own eyes, and for once, I didn't see the woman trying to come home. I saw the one who had already arrived. On my way out, I passed by the desk. The Paris globe still sat beside the paper stars. 7 in all, 1 for each part of me that had broken, bent, reshaped. I didn't take them with me. They weren't meant to be carried anymore. Outside, the snow was heavier, coating everything in a thin hush. I zipped the coat squared, my shoulders stepped into it. At the bus stop, a little girl with a red scarf stared at me. Her eyes went straight to the medals. Her mother tugged at her hand, embarrassed. But the girl didn't look away, so I gave her a small nod. Not a smile, a nod. Recognition. The bus came. I boarded, sat by the window, watched the flag at the center ripple in the wind as we approached. It looked brighter in the snow, like something reborn, not reclaimed. I thought about the candle, how long I'd carried that tiny flame. How many nights it was the only thing that reminded me I existed, that I mattered, that I still had fire in me. But I didn't need it anymore, because the flame wasn't gone. It was just inside now, and it was mine.